Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 109. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, don't know about you, my March Madness bracket already a mess after an exciting day one. My upsets did not come through. I was on the high point bandwagon over Purdue and VCU to win, and so I'm already in rough shape, but hopefully you and your bracket doing better than me.
Yeah, I don't think it is overall. I had a couple of upsets that I thought might come through. I had and one that I didn't. Everybody seemed to be on that McNeese bandwagon. I said I'm going to go the opposite way than that. And Clemson, to their credit, at least kind of made it kind of close there. But let's see, what else did I have that did not come through on my bracket here? I had VCU beating BYU. That didn't happen. What else did I not have? I think that was pretty much the bulk of the ones that I was hoping would hit, but didn't. Oh, I think I had, no, I got Wisconsin right. Wisconsin over Montana there. I think a lot of people were probably thinking Montana would pull. Oh, no, I'm not even looking at mine there. I'm looking at Troy's. Let's see here. No, I had, I thought that looked strange. I had Montana upsetting Wisconsin. I had VCU upsetting BYU. That didn't happen. I had Yale beating Texas A&M. That didn't happen. Anyway, people don't tune in to hear our brackets being busted. I think didn't I win this thing, the Depot pool last year? I think I did.
I think so.
But I'm willing to bet you we got a larger group. We got about, I don't know what, 20 of the staff in our group and all that. We're giving it a try this year to win some of Uncle Dave's money. And I don't think Uncle Dave's going to win Uncle Dave's money this week. Speaking of money, how's that for a segue? We got got some things to talk about today.
Yeah, we'll talk DK Metcalf, know the full contract details on that. That gave you enough information to provide a Pittsburgh Steelers salary cap update. We'll talk a couple of signings Pittsburgh has made, bringing back a couple of their own, and one outsider to continue to bolster the defensive line depth, some pro day information as well. Let's start, though, Dave, with the players the Steelers have signed or re-signed. Three of them bringing back two of their own, and outside linebacker Jeremiah Moon to a one-year contract, cornerback James Pierre on a one-year contract, and also an outside signing, the third defensive lineman to either be re-signed or signed from a prior team this week in Esezi Otomewo, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is also, I believe, a one-year contract, and so he joins Daniel Akwale and Isaiah Loudermilk to give Pittsburgh some defensive line depth.
Welcome to veteran benefit contract season, Alex. A lot of these, I think, are going to be just that. They are throwing a lot of mud at the defensive line room wall, if you will, at this point. And I think I just sent you a link to the updated defensive lineman under contract currently. None of this really has moved the needle too terribly much. Obviously we talked the other day about the return of Isaiah Loudermilk and Daniel Akwale we talked about. No, now they have Esezi added to that room. I think Josh did the film room on Esezi and all, and I think he's going to be a guy that's got his work cut out to make the 53-man roster based on what I've seen and based on what Josh Carney's film room has to say about him. I would like to see maybe one more guy that has a good chance of cracking this 53-man roster added to this room ahead of the draft. But I'm not convinced now, maybe at this point, that they're going to go down that road. What do you think about this entire group, which has grown by 1, 2, 3 players over the course of the last several days, I guess.
I mean, they built out depth. It's really no different than our conversation when they signed Aquale from the Patriots and brought back Loudermilk. You're bringing in some depth pieces, and Otomewo is going to further that, but these are not obviously starting solutions. And a guy like Otomewo is not guaranteed of anything. None of these guys are really guaranteed, although I think Aquale's got a good chance to make this team as at least backup, base end rotational depth. So the starter remains outstanding. You were staring at that first round pick saying, do you feel obligated and compelled to take defensive line? Because if you don't then, and you're starting that journey at pick 83 in the third round, you're in a really tight spot at that point. So, I'm all for depth and adding competition and raising the floor of the room. You do kind of wonder, okay, how much depth is enough? You don't really need to keep adding these. It's like when they added a bunch of those receivers last year, and Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller. I was like, okay, kind of get it. You're adding some low-level cheap guys, but where's the starter? So the question kind of remains, where is the starter? It should come through the draft, but the draft is unpredictable. There are no guarantees, and so until that name gets slotted in, like receiver last year, it's going to remain that big elephant in the room defensively.
Yeah, I agree. And I told you a couple of days ago to not forget to ask me about certain defensive linemen. I had kind of in free agents had my eye on, and you forgot to ask me.
what I'm best at. I remembered later.
And since then, they have the 3 other guys in the room now, so it might be a moot point at this point. John Kaminsky, is a guy that. Man, it seems like we've talked about 2 or 3 different times on this show over the years, and they could have had him on the cheap a couple of years ago. Didn't. I think he landed with the Lions and played pretty well. Unfortunately, suffered, I think, MCL, I think it was. I don't know if it was an ACL. I think it was an MCL. Maybe that was reported, not ACL. But anyway, I think he's still rehabbing that. He missed, obviously, time last year because of that injury. And I think his season had come to an end prematurely and placed on IR and all like that. But I think there was some talk that, he's going to be healthy, sooner rather than later here during this offseason here. I would be interested to see if the Steelers could go out and get him maybe on a 1 or 2 year at a reasonable price. I don't think he's a minimum priced guy anymore, even coming off the injury. But on the flip side, because he did have that injury, I think his market value is going to be depressed, quite a bit at this point. Just screams. What this team could use, on that defensive line room as they start to transition, obviously into some younger players here and potentially in the draft. So that was the guy that I was teasing that I had my eye on. But of course, we have talked about him a couple of times on this podcast over the years.
Yeah, it's kind of like I forget the guy that I had my eyes on for several years.
Jacoby Brissett.
Well, I don't know if I was ever huge on Brissett. It was a defensive lineman. I'm trying to think of the pronunciation right now. Who's an analyst right now? Legier Duzable.
Yeah, Dozable or Duzable.
Yeah, I'm butchering it really, really poorly here, but that's kind of the guy I was always pining for year after year. That's kind of Kaminsky for you right now. So, could it happen? We'll see. Pittsburgh certainly shown an appetite to bring in depth, great competition, but after signing 3 guys this week, they may finally be done in terms of their depth exploration.
At least until after the draft now. To see what they land there and all, because once again, it wasn't just a couple of days ago I posted, man, look at this, look at the number and quality of depth behind Cameron Hayward and Keanu Benton here. And then obviously since then they've added the 3 that we've already talked about here and in kind of lower level players, with Loudermilk obviously being a return in that room and all. So all that's to be said is that this room still needs addressing, and nothing that this team has done in a defensive line room should sway them from potentially drafting a defensive lineman in the first round. And they'll be we expect got a big pro day today, don't we? Michigan Pro Day, the annual Michigan Pro Day. We're expecting at any point now for there to be a spotting of Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, We'll see if Terrell Austin goes, and we'll see if Carl Dunbar goes. But that could potentially be a school that we see the Steelers' first-round draft pick come out of, and especially if it's a defensive lineman.
And Kenneth Grant would be, you would think, top name, most likely name to become a future Pittsburgh Steeler. Mason Graham probably off the board by the time Pittsburgh picks at number 21. Although if he were to slip a little bit, you do wonder what could happen. There's just some quick information on Otomewo, former fifth-round pick of the Vikings in 2022 out of Minnesota, but spent last year and the last really 2 years with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Has just a little bit of NFL experience, played in 4 games last year, 2 starts, 4 tackles. He's got about less than 200 career defensive snaps. He's got some size, some length, tested pretty well coming out of college. But obviously we're talking more depth here and no guarantees to make the 53. That was kind of Josh's takeaway in his brief breakdown of his game.
All right, agreed. And we already talked about Aquale, and obviously we know a lot about Loudermilk at this point.
It's all the more reason I'm happy Kyle Juszczyk did not become a Steeler, because we got some tough names here to write and pronounce with and I've been working on the pronunciation here because I want to try to give everyone their credit here. Yeah, it's Esezi Otomewo is how you say that. Aquale is at least a little bit easier to pronounce and spell.
But people get a kick out of when they sign some of these guys to look forward to maybe, or not look forward to me pronouncing some of them. Can't even say pronounce.
Say pronounce. You know, it's just so tough because we're so used to. I'm somebody, because we're always writing and reading. You read it once, and however you phonetically think about it in your head, that's what sticks. And then once you actually learn the pronunciation, you have to then kind of retrain yourself to say it correctly. And so it's just one of those things where, of course, we do the podcast, but we're writing and reading more than we're talking. And for me, once it's in my head, the way I read it one time, I'd have the hardest time trying to correct myself.
I blame on my issues with that is I have a speech impediment, and second, I was born and raised in the South, and I'm undereducated.
Valid. All right, Dave, let's talk about the other 2 players Pittsburgh brought back. And what was kind of curious with Jeremiah Moon, the outside linebacker who spent last year with the team, spent the start of the season on injured reserve and then became a rotational outside linebacker and special teamer, most notably that blocked punt in Week 6 win over the Las Vegas Raiders. He was an exclusive rights free agent, was not tendered, which would have been, virtually guarantee he comes back to Pittsburgh for a really, really cheap, basically minimum level contract. Was not tendered, but then re-signed reportedly to a 1-year deal. So not really sure why Pittsburgh opted to not tender and then sign him back, but Jeremiah Moon reportedly back in the fold.
Yeah, I've always kind of been curious of the reasoning of that because, and I think we talked about this the other day. You saw a couple other exclusive rights free agents around the NFL not tendered by teams, and then 1 or 2 of those I think had already decided to sign back with their teams at the start of free agency there. So I've always been curious as to what the reasoning behind not exclusive rights free agent tendering a player, because that's a 1-year minimum contract. I even went back and looked at to make sure I had the credited seasons right on him. Was I missing something? Was there a COVID year or something like that? Maybe he got credit for where he was maybe a restricted free agent that did not get tendered, and I couldn't find anything. So I don't know the reason behind it, because this team did tender Ryan McCollum, their other exclusive rights free agent. He re-signed right away, and I just have never fully grasped the concept of why, if you're going to bring the guy back like that, did the guy just ask to go out and view his market value? I don't know. I mean, it's unlike the Steelers to say, okay, yeah, when they have complete control over the player in that situation, to let him go test. But anyway, that's a minor concern. He's back, and I would imagine when the details of that get released, it's just going to be a minimum contract.
This doesn't change his status for next year. He'll still be a restricted free agent next year, correct?
He should be, assuming he makes the roster and is on the roster for the X amount of games. Yeah, he should be a restricted free agent next offseason.
Okay, I was wondering if that maybe was part of the calculation, but doesn't seem to be. But regardless of how he returned and why he returned, and the the chronological order in which he returned. He's here right now, probably number four outside linebacker behind Watt and Highsmith and Herbig. No guarantee he makes a team. He's a guy that looks the part. I think is a quality special teamer, good run defender. The question to me has always been about pass rush and can you athletically, is he good enough? Is he refined enough with his hand use and technique? He seemed to be kind of a raw lump of clay that wasn't really an effective, kind of an oversized outside linebacker. So that's going to be the question with him. But for now, he's going to be certainly battling for that final outside linebacker spot.
Yeah, I thought he had some decent, some decent snaps in there. When on the field, and obviously can play on some special teams, but we'll see what this team does in the rest of free agency and obviously the draft and the undrafted free agent class. I tell you, one guy that interested to see his second year progress is that international player Julius Welshoff, because he sure seemed to be playing pretty good during the preseason, and then unfortunately had that knee injury last year. Maybe this is a guy that could potentially compete, for let's say a fourth or fifth outside linebacker spot.
Yeah, it's a great point. He was a guy that had a lot of promise and, was injured, like you said, then released, and then came back to Pittsburgh late in the season. It's pretty similar to Moon. They're big guys. They're better against the run than they are as pass rushers. I know Wilshoff had a bunch of sacks last preseason, but they weren't always the most high quality sacks, but also guys who can play on special teams. That's what Wilshoff did throughout the bulk of his time at Michigan before transferring to Charlotte. He got hurt down there and then came to Pittsburgh and was also on special teams in the summer. So those guys, similar players, could be fighting for a similar role in 2025.
Agreed.
Also, I got to look over the list some more, but I just saw a post from the NFL the other day about the international prospects for 2025, and there's like some 6'9", 350-pound rugby player that's going to be part of the IPP pool this year, the International Pathway Program. So I want to learn about that guy. Seems pretty interesting.
Isn't it only four? How do they break that up now?
What do you mean?
Is it all teams that participate in that, or is it still like only a division or something?
I believe every team gets one international slot exemption, the way that Welshoff was this past year. But specifically, the IPP is a certain pool of players that are basically ones who have never formally played football, that didn't play college ball, and are trying to learn about the game and get trained up. The way, remember Travis Clayton, the offensive tackle from last year, the UK guy, those type of guys, and that's the IPP. But you can have players like Welshoff who are international born and count as the exemption, even though Welshoff lived stateside for years and played college football at Michigan and Charlotte. So there's kind of some nuance to it, but this is one of those guys that basically has just never played football before. It's going through the IPP. They'll be at the South Florida Pro Day, and there'll probably be there was a docu-series on it last year and probably will be this year.
All right. Good news there.
All right, Dave. James Pierre coming back as well. 1-year contract for him. Steelers did not initially have him in camp last year. Remember, he was kind of part of the gunner retooling when they brought in Ben Skoranek and brought back James Pierre, and that's kind of his specialty is special teams. He did play some defensive snaps last year, had an interception against Cleveland, but best known for helping out on the coverage team, and that will be his mission to make the team in 2025.
Yeah, I think we wondered a couple of days ago, would he be one of the ones next up on the list on a 1-year return here, and that ultimately it took a few days, but it came to fruition there. I know a lot of people are saying, why do they want to do that? Well, look, obviously his calling card is special teams, and does have some experience in that defense. You don't want him playing a lot of snaps if you can get away from it, but at least he does have experience in that defense. He is above average gunner, and now at this point, I mean, you got for this time of the offseason, you've got two quality candidates to be your gunners back in Ben Skoranek and James Pierre. Oh, that's another thing that we failed to address real quick, the Ben Skoranek thing. That I thought that would for sure going to end up being a veteran benefit contract for 1 year. Turns out that was I think it was a 2-year, $4.5 million deal. So Ben Skoranek means a lot to the Steelers, and the fact that they gave him a 2-year deal and some sort of a signing bonus that we're still waiting on to see what it is. And even though it is a 2-year deal and there was a signing bonus, doesn't fully guarantee him making the 53-man roster. His chances really, I think, did improve. And they really like him. And they like his special teams play. So, we talk about it quite a bit, sometimes too much in the ears of some listeners, but special teams matters, especially to teams like the Steelers. And at this point right now, they've at least got two really strong, viable candidates to make the roster on 1 year, or in Pierre's case, a 1 year deal, and Skoranek a 2-year deal in Ben Skoranek and James Pierre.
And that contract for Skoranek suggests there was some competition. The Pittsburgh was not the only team interested in his services, and that's why you had to pay a little extra money to get him. But money well spent, and it's not much money still in the grand scope of things. Pierre is a guy that ideally, if he does make the team, is that real true special teamer only defensively. He's always had talent. He's made plays, but he's just been so inconsistent. Above the neck has been a problem. Mental mistakes and blunders and gaffes. I know last year he got known for that drop fake punt against Washington, which luckily is a little more forgettable because Pittsburgh won that game. That's all just a one-off thing. But he's ideally you want your top corner depth this year to be Corey Trice Jr. and Brandon Echols, and Pierre would be behind that as a pure special teamer only is really the best thing for the team.
And what did I write up about Echols when his contract came across and his special teams snaps? It was something like 200 and something he's averaged, I think, over the past 4 years with the Jets. And as you stated, I think he was primarily used as a gunner, right?
He's done it all. He's been a gunner. He's been a vice. He's been on multi-face player and probably will be in Pittsburgh. And by the way, that's got numbers on his contract too, right? 2 years, $6 million for Brandon Echols.
2 years, $6 million. He was given a $1.83 million signing bonus. His salary cap charge for the 2025 season, just $2.085 million. Let's see. For his NFL career, he has registered 122 regular season tackles. Where was the special team snaps? He has played just over 700 special team snaps since being drafted by the Jets, and that's an average of 175 per season. So assuming he makes a roster, he's going to be on some special teams units. Not a core guy, but could, like you said, be a vice and a gunner potentially.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's getting pretty close to core. If you're on punt return and kick and punt coverage, he's probably on kicks as well, at least on kick coverage, maybe not kick return. So, yeah, he's still going to be pretty darn close to a 3, maybe almost 4th base kind of a guy.
Right.
And a good contract. Obviously, that money is totally fine.
Right.
Speaking of the salary cap, Dave, let's talk about a much larger contract in DK Metcalf. We talked about, had that emergency episode of the podcast on Wednesday over the structure of Metcalf's contract. We now have full details, courtesy of Pro Football Talk, on the entirety of that contract. And Dave, that allowed you to write a salary cap update for Steelers Depot this morning. Everyone should go check it out. It is pinned to the top of the page. And so, Dave, I'll let you have the floor here with this DK Metcalf contract details.
Yeah, and what kind of rattled off some rough numbers the way I thought this thing might look based on the early reporting from Joel Corey the other day that stated $60 million through the first 2 years, and that being fully guaranteed. And I think I threw out pretty close numbers overall. I was pretty proud that this thing came in pretty close to that. $30 million signing bonus for DK Metcalf. His base salary, I think for 2025, Florio reported it at $5 million, but I think it's actually come in with that little extra carryover amount on him. So I believe his base salary, according to Pro Football, over the cap, was $5,471,000, and that would make sense because he was due $18 million $471,000 the way his final year of his contract was structured or scheduled to be when the Steelers traded for him. So that's the only minor detail that I think Pro Football Talk didn't list correctly in there. Assuming that over the cap's right, DK Metcalf's cap number for 2025 will go from 18,471,000 down to 11,471,000. So we talked about how we expected DK Metcalf's 2025 cap charge to come down as a result of this deal. It obviously did by $7 million. He is due a base salary in 2026 of $25 million. That's fully guaranteed too. That's the other portion of fully guaranteed money. So you had the base salary in 2025, you have the base salary in 2026, you have the signing bonus of $30 million, and that's how you get the $60 million and some change, 471,000 that's fully guaranteed in this deal. And his cap charge in 2026 was scheduled to be 31 million. He becomes a prime candidate to possibly restructure this time next year or at some point during the offseason should this team need some salary cap space, and should DK Metcalf stay healthy and productive, which we all hope and think he will. Moving on into the final 3 years of the contract, base salaries of $20 million, $23 million, and $30.5 million, respectively, through 2029. Wondered about the roster bonus situation and whether or not they would do something with him. He has roster bonuses in the final 3 years, 2027, 2028, in 2029. And by the way, the 2027 base salary of $20 million is guaranteed for injury only. We had that conversation last week about the different type of guarantees. So effectively, as they like to say, he's got $80 million guaranteed. Realistically, he's got $60 million fully guaranteed here. The base salary of $6.5 million, or the roster bonus in 2027 of $6.5 million, really gives this team the first out opportunity. And let's hope that we're not having to talk about an instance where this team's needing an out after the 2026 season with DK Metcalf. But should indeed they need an out for whatever reason, it would probably be in March, before March 17th of 2027, before they pay that $6.5 million. What would probably happen is they would, if they had to have the out, they would cut him prior to paying that roster bonus on March 17th. And what they would probably do is designate him as a June 1st cap casualty. That way they could defer $12 million of the remaining $18 million in dead money until 2028. But once again, that's worst case scenario, and hopefully we're not talking about it. But $60 million fully guaranteed through the first 2 years. He's got an APY of $33 million as far as the new money average goes, while the contract in total totals $150,471,000. You subtract $18,471,000 from that as old money, and that gives you a realistic new money contract value of the 4 new years of $132 million in total. So, as you know, once again, this came out roughly around the contract numbers that we threw out the other day. The most newsworthy thing, several kind of newsworthy things about this overall. The fact that they traded for an outside guy and second round draft pick is somewhat newsworthy in itself, although we've seen this team trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick before, although he was on the rookie contract at the time of that. But you're trading for a guy that comes to you with a with a base salary of $18 million, and then you work out an extension with him, and the fact that they fully guaranteed the first 2 years with DK Metcalf, A, being an outsider, and B, not being the top of the market, resetting the market at his particular position, is the thing that we highlighted the other day in kind of the emergency podcast, if you will. And I realize there's some people out there saying this is not significant in any way, shape, or form, but like it or not, this is a precedent. And we've talked about, man, we'd like to see this team break a few precedents this offseason. And while this might be splitting hairs about the significance of the precedent, it is something new for this team, and it is newsworthy.
Disagree to anyone who says this is not newsworthy, the structure of this contract. To me, it is not just, and it's less about the here and now for Metcalf, but how contracts work going forward with Pittsburgh, which is the precedent that we talked about in terms of how they're structured and the sea change that Pittsburgh may have undergone with this Metcalf deal. It does feel like at least some merger of old school and new school, with the first 2 years fully guaranteed, and then Pittsburgh's tried and true bunch of roster bonuses, which are in some sense quasi guarantees, let the player know where he stands before free agency sort of situation. So I think Pittsburgh is trying to combine their, the old philosophy with the new one. But either way, it's still certainly notable on the structure of the Metcalf contract.
Right. And even when you have, a couple of days ago, Joe Corey responded to somebody on Twitter, was asked about the guaranteed money and all like that. And he goes on to say that Minkah Fitzpatrick had $36 million fully guaranteed at signing his 2022 and 2023 contract years. And he writes specifically, it will be interesting to see how DK Metcalf's deal is structured. Now, why would, who's that, Brian, with the fingers up in the air? Why would he say that? Because he knows as well too that even, because Metcalf not being a top of the market player at his position, at time of signing the contract, he understood kind of the significance of the DK Metcalf deal and fully guaranteeing the first 2 years there. So once again, people probably say you guys are a bunch of damn nerds to have an emergency podcast to talk about 2 years of guaranteed money when they've already done at least the first 2 years with Minkah Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt, who they did the first 3 years. But to what degree you want to consider this significant is obviously up to debate. But I tracked this stuff for a long time, Alex, and this is to some degree has a level of significance to it.
And to be fair, valid. We are nerds. It's a fair accusation, but yeah, I mean, the guy that's tracked it as long as anybody, if you take note of it, everyone should take note of it. So I certainly find the noteworthiness of the Metcalf structure. I know you ran through the numbers, but just to put them together, what is the amount of cash spending on Metcalf that will apply to Pittsburgh in 2025? What is the total cash reflection?
35 million 100 or 471,000.
Okay, so we talk about getting to that 90% rule. I think your expectation is what, 95% of cash spending, cap spending?
Right. At least I'm expecting at least 95% of the 2025 cap number to be spent in cash by this team this offseason. The cap number is $279.2 million. Rough estimate right now, and this does not include the signing bonuses coming up for the draft class. And it only works off of the rule of 51 right now. And obviously, you still got a quarterback out there to go. But I have this team at right around cash on the books with their top 51 estimated to be around $221.7 million. So if you take 60 or 90% of the cap number this year, you're talking about what, 250? No, that's 90. I had to do 95%. You're looking at 265.2 million roughly. And this team is right now around 221.7. That's a gap of what?
$43 million.
Yeah, so that's
Something.
and there's been a lot of talk about whether or not if they sign a guy like Aaron Rodgers, will that be a 1-year deal at around $35 million? And then you throw in a TJ Watt extension at some point during the offseason with he's already on the books to have a cash spend of a little more than 21 million. So will that cash number will his updated cash number be about, I don't know, 25 million more than that? I mean, it puts us right on course for this team to at least hit that 95% of the cap number in cash, and it maybe more in line of around 97% of the number if we're being realistic here, especially if they sign a quarterback to a 1-year deal at, say, 30 or 35 million.
Which is really no surprise as you've laid out because they were under that 90% target this past year. And so to get to 90%, you got to go over it in future years. And it seems like they're very much on track to do so.
What did I say the cash number was for the first year percentage? Hold on a minute.
I think it was 80 something percent, 85%.
I think it was a little bit higher than that. Hold on a minute here.
I thought it was below 90. He told me.
Let's see here. Oh, I'm having a problem. I was expecting the Steelers to spend around 92% of the 2024 cap number in cash. They spent 90%.
Okay, so they were right at 90%.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. But they'll be well above that this year, it appears.
Right, exactly.
Does this precedent change the dynamic of the Watt extension at all? Now, theoretically, Pittsburgh, I think, could give Watt less than top of the market average yearly value and still guarantee years past year one. Does that change the equation in your mind?
I mean, I'm still expecting him to be the highest paid edge rusher at the very least, if not the highest paid, maybe potentially non-quarterback. Come time. So
that gap is pretty small between Garrett and Chase.
Yeah,
I am still of the belief that Watt will top Garrett's number, just because I'm now thinking that Watt does not want to be second place behind Myles Garrett.
Right. The big discuss. I don't think the discussion is will they do it. I've never thought that's been the discussion of will they do it. I've always taken it as almost a near guarantee they will do it. I think at this point is is he the new highest paid a edge rusher? B, is he the highest paid defensive player? And C, is he the most expensive non-quarterback? Those are really the three kind of questions, I think.
The first two are one and the same, though, because if he becomes the highest paid edge rusher, he'll automatically become the highest paid defensive player, correct?
I think at this moment, yes, right. But I mean, what could happen? I haven't really looked around the landscape of the league that might happen between him, signing his deal.
Mm-hmm. I guess to me the question is just how difficult of a deal does this become? Because if this had happened, 2 months ago, I think it's a really cut and dry type of deal. Now I still think it's trickier than before.
Well, I mean, they probably already have the parameters in their head laid out of what this thing is going to be, and maybe the tougher negotiations of, well, do they only fully guarantee 2 years this time and not 3, or is it fully guaranteed 3? And I don't know that it necessarily makes it tougher as much as it just makes it a little bit more expensive,
Well, that usually by extension, it's more expensive, makes deals tougher to do. And I'm sure what was in Pittsburgh's head at the start of the offseason was not 40-point-something million, was probably 35 million to top Bosa, and that price has gone up. And so,
well, they had to know that the Parsons thing's going to happen, and they probably had a good idea that even if Garrett landed outside of the Browns, or even with the Browns, that something was going to happen there. So, they're smarter than I am on this stuff.
And yet they did not get that deal done ahead of time when it would have been cheaper, knowing that Hendrickson and Parsons and Crosby and Garrett were all coming due.
Right. Look, the fact of the matter is we still expect the Watt extension to happen. It's just at what amount and at what cash flow and at what fully guaranteed amount. That's
Sure.
long and short of that.
But in practical terms, is there a hold-in? Does this negotiation stretch on as long as the last one in 2021, which went up to almost at the start of week 1? These have become more complicated factors that are not just academic in terms of what is the structure and what is the yearly value, but how is there a potential impact on the field, at least this summer?
It could be. It could be. Now, look, I think they're probably waiting to see what happens with this quarterback situation, and
Sure.
anytime after that, they could definitely get this thing done, especially with the amount of cap space and look, I mean, when you look, I guess it's a good time to kind of segue into kind of where this team is at in the current here and now, following all these deals and all like that. Where this team sits cap wise, I must let everyone know though that there's still not reporting out there on several of these recent deals. Guys like we still don't know the exact number of the Mason Rudolph, even though we have an idea. We don't know the exact layout of that. Ben Skoranek, Scotty Miller, James Pierre, Isaiah Loudermilk, Juan Thornhill, Daniel Quale, and Esezi Otomewo. Say it again.
Esezi Otomewo.
Okay, we still don't know the exact numbers of those deals. Have not been reported yet. Now, I've got a very good idea what all of them will be. And the big holdup was, finding out the specifics of the DK Metcalf deals. So I put on my best guess cap and projected these contracts out of all the remaining guys at this point in real time, and I have this team sitting at a little more than 38.7 million under the cap. I kind of think at worst, if I'm wrong, on the low side, it's maybe 38 million, under the cap, but right there about 38 million under the cap based on everything that has transpired up until right now. Now, you look fast forward into forthcoming off-season costs, such as workout bonus and the rule of 51, adding the 52nd, 53rd player, the draft class pool offset, the practice squad, in-season replacement fund, and in other words, how much they're going to carry into the offseason as far as space. That's roughly still, almost $16 million you have to account for. So that leaves a kind of a projected effective usable salary cap space of nearly $23 million. And you still have that albatross hanging around your neck about what is the quarterback contract going to be potentially coming up here. And if you have $38.7 million in available salary cap space in real time, and you go out and sign, let's say, Aaron Rodgers to a 1-year, $35 million contract, and you choose not to use void years, well, all of a sudden you're down to $3 million in cap space, and you're well over the cap as far as projected effective usable salary cap space. Well, then you go back to the fact that TJ Watt currently has a cap charge of 30.4, a little bit more than $30.4 million. Whatever, when an extension does come in from him, that's going to lower his 2025 cap charge considerably, and probably enough to cover that nearly $16 million that you have forthcoming in expenses closer to the start of the regular season there. So all of the math per se is mathing at this point, and really the main takeaway at this team being at 38.7 or thereabouts under the cap right now is they can afford a 1-year contract on an expensive quarterback. Who that quarterback is and what that amount is, obviously to be determined. But above and beyond that, for all practical purposes, we've seen the bulk of the free agent and signings, for this team this offseason. Now, should a deal cut, should a player at a very reasonable above minimum salary contract come up, entice them? Could they do such a deal? Yes, certainly they can, because even though your rule of 51 is your rule of 51 right now, I mean, what's going to happen with a guy like Cordell Patterson? What's going to happen with maybe a few of these other kind of questionable guys, if you will?
I hope
You
Dean
know,
Lowry's renting right now. He's seeing all
yeah,
these other guys getting signed.
yeah, Dean Lowry. There's not going to be a huge amount of money to be saved there, cap space wise, after roster displacement takes place. But if you get 3 or 4 of these guys together, that's potentially $3 million, $4 million that you're saving there. So that makes a difference when in and of itself there. So I think this thing's tracking along very predictable at this time. But if you're listening to this and you're hoping that this team's going to go out and sign another $10 or $11 million per year APY player, I don't know about that. I think you're looking at players, a player or players underneath that, and guys that you could get the 2025 cap hit at more around, I don't know, $3-4 million at a most there. So I think once again, we welcomed everybody to veteran benefit contract season a little while ago during this show. I think that's where we're at right now, Alex.
It appears so, and partly because the free agent pool has really become more watered down. Many of those top names have officially signed, and so there aren't a lot of guys that are going to command. I mean, who are the biggest free agents right now? A couple of the receivers, I suppose. Stephon Diggs is making some visits, and Amari Cooper is still out there. Quarterback aside, you don't have a lot of other big names out there at this point.
Yeah, Lockett's still out there, right?
Yep, Tyler Lockett, good point. He's still a couple of receivers, veteran types, and that's really it. And it was not regarded as a great free agency class in general, and a bunch of guys ended up re-signing too, which narrowed the pool even more. And so you have a pretty thin class remaining.
So if you take that estimated what I have right now at $221.7 million in cash that this team has spent right now, let's throw on another $25 million additional cash in 2025 for a Watt extension. That puts us damn near at $250 million in cash. You're going to have, I don't know, $8-9 million in additional cash for your free agents. I mean, not free agents, for your draft class. They're signing bonus amounts and all there, and then you add on, let's say, a 30 plus $1 million one-time cash charge for a quarterback. I mean, that pretty much maps it out, eats it up right there as far as cash spending goes.
You have alignment in your spreadsheet, Dave, and that's the state you need to be in. So I'm happy to hear it.
Right. So once again, I'm not saying that you won't see a moderate signing, the rest of the way out here, but I think you're probably looking at a lot of 1-year veteran minimum deals for the minimum, and maybe one guy that earns at best 6-7 million. Yeah, to me, that would have to be like a Tyler Lockett or something like that. So I think you've seen the bulk of the significant moves that this team's going to make this offseason at this point, at least until past the draft.
Perhaps a post-draft cut, as you floated before. They've done that with Larry Ogunjobi. He wasn't a post-draft cut, but a post-draft signing, and some other veterans that are out there past the comp period, and whenever some players and rosters get shuffled around after next month's draft. That is possible, but we'll have to wait and see.
All
right, Dave. So overall, cap-wise, they've been in good shape. They continue to be in good shape. Is that a fair, just quick one-sentence way to describe the situation?
Yeah, the only question is what it's been for a while now. Who's the quarterback going to be, and at what price, and will it be a 1-year deal or will it be a 2-year deal? Can almost guarantee that they're not going to guarantee money for Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or who, insert name there. Past 2025, it doesn't feel like. So we just wait on the quarterback.
And no update there. We will spend very little time, hopefully almost no time at all, talking about it, because there really has been no update on the quarterback situation since we last spoke.
Right.
All right, Dave, let's move on now let's talk about Najee Harris here for a second. His comments has drawn a lot of fire recently after signing with Los Angeles, I should say. Did a media interview with a local news station over there and really offered a lot of commentary he's offered before about him potentially being misused in Pittsburgh and the struggles the Steelers endured with a young offense, a lack of identity, leadership, but it's drawn a lot of national headlines. Bart Scott trying to, or I should say, really kind of ripping him pretty good today, talking about how Harris is ungrateful for his time in Pittsburgh. Is Harris's comments in line, fair, foul? The reaction to it nationally? What's your take on it all?
I think overall they're fair comments. Overall, with kind of the criticism, I don't know how that does him any good to get into that now at this point. I know a lot of people are glad he did, so they're saying, "Aha!" You know, it, it confirms some of the in there. A lot of people, it confirms things that they have been saying, fans of the team. I'm stating, and analysts and all like that. And read off some. Here's one of his quotes: "My time in Pittsburgh, it was a lot of learning things, a lot of learning experiences. Playing for Mike Tomlin, playing in that division, there were a lot of ways I didn't even realize what the NFL was really about until I came to Pittsburgh. I don't want to go into detail with it, but I feel there was a lot of stuff in my game where I could have elevated more and I could have did more. I feel like I just didn't get it done. I feel like I was obviously missing something. It was interesting years there. I'll just say that. Interesting years." And I believe we've got weren't there a few more comments that he made here?
Yeah, I'll read one off here. This is talking about the youth and lack of leadership and identity for the offense. He says, quote, "We just didn't know anything on offense, really. We didn't have any identity. We had a young guy coming in a quarterback. I was young. The team was young. I really didn't have nobody to almost learn from on the offensive side. I'm just trying to look for people to pick their brain of." And so, yeah, I mean, this is not new. He's talked about this before, even in Pittsburgh, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, Matt Canada was a terrible OC, and the struggles that came along with that, and Pittsburgh was in that transitional period. Post Ben, just the 1 year together, Harrison and Ben played, and then you had to really kind of move on from there, and a loss in leadership and that vacuum that was created. So, to me, this is not any new ground that Harris is covering, not any surprising ground, but I suppose the national media is getting more exposure to it compared to what we've witnessed and heard and watched the last 4 seasons.
Once again, I think it's fair him saying these things that he said. I subscribe. Look, I mean, you come in, you got, right away, you got kind of questions about, what 1 year with Ben, right?
Yep, the first season.
And then you go into Trubisky, Pickett, Mason, and obviously most of that was with a rookie quarterback into Pickett's second season there, and still and you had to change the offensive coordinator, and all along, Najee's thinking he's underutilized, maybe particularly in the passing game, and just the retooling of the offensive line, the way they ended up going about it and all. So overall, do I think Najee's comments are fair and founded? Yes. On the flip side, I don't, other than placating to the Steelers fan base as he walks out the door there, and maybe giving more ammunition to them and things that they've been kind of harping on as potential narratives. I get that. I just don't know how that helps him overall as he puts on a new uniform in saying that. And I suppose that's why he's getting the backlash from I don't know who, Pat Bostwick and Bart
Art Scott today on
Bart Scott
ESPN.
today on ESPN. And I imagine some of these comments might be thrown back at Mike Tomlin. potentially during the upcoming spring meetings, and Omar Khan next time he speaks, and Arthur Smith the next time he gets in front of the camera, whenever that is. So, I mean, it is worth highlighting what he said. It is worth discussing here what he said, and end of day, I don't take issue with it. I think, once again, I think some of the things he said are worth discussing. And I think that they hold some water here. I just don't know that it does him any good. Him.
No, but does it harm him at all? Don't we like when players are honest and
Sure.
candid and don't give the same robotic PR answers every single time?
And if there's one thing that's not who's not robotic, it's him, right?
Sure.
I think he'll actually enjoy his media sessions a little bit, at least initially out there in LA, because they've got two teams to kind of focus on. Those don't get amplified as much overall unless they are very, very, very newsworthy, if you will. They're not parsed, I don't believe, as much. They usually come out later in the day as far as the news cycle goes because of West Coast and all like that. They don't have as large of a group, I don't think, of at least notable guys covering the team out there in LA, even though it is a big market city, as far as that goes. So, I mean, I don't begrudge the guy. I don't hate the guy for the comments. I don't know where they help him, but everybody likes the fact that players say what's on their mind and not what people think should be on their mind.
And in LA, Najee Harris is not first round pick Najee Harris. He's just free agent signing Najee Harris. There's less of a weight that comes with that. Yeah, I mean, agreed. Najee did not say anything incorrect. It was all pretty accurate. But frankly, to me, not anything new or all that interesting because he said it all before, even like I said in his Pittsburgh tenure, and it's pretty obvious that Pittsburgh lacked leadership and was a young team and didn't have identity and had a poorly run offense for many seasons under Matt Canada. So this is not a revelation. This did not get me out of my chair. It's something we've been watching and talking about for years now.
But when you circle back now and leaving Najee Harris's name specifically out of it, and the transformation or the changes that this organization was going through, particularly on offense from a franchise quarterback, and not having they went about it backwards, right? They spent the first round pick on the running back position, did not truly even know who their next franchise quarterback would be, had kind of a real shaky offensive line, kind of situation there. Yeah. Yeah. Fast forward into how he was used and the changes at offensive coordinator and all. Did they go about this thing once again, leaving the specific name of Najee Harris out of this? Did they go about it wrong in spending a first round draft pick on the running backs, a few years ago?
I mean, we can debate that for a while, I'm sure. You look at what else was available at the time, and I hate drafting by hindsight because it's always easy to look back. I think I would be the best drafting GM in the world if I had one or two items, a crystal ball or a time machine. If I could look forward or look past, I'd be great at drafting like anybody else. And it's not like they passed on somebody that was so obvious that they had to take this guy. And oh my God, I can't believe they missed on him. There weren't a lot of other offensive linemen at the time that were viewed as first round selections. I know people could point to Dickerson, who went, I think, early second round. But again, a little bit of that is hindsight aided. I think philosophically, it's still fair to critique Pittsburgh overall, how they built this team and didn't invest in the O-line first in any regard. And then, built out the skill positions first and missed on quarterback, all that kind of stuff. I think that is fair. But yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, any team has that struggle of the post Hall of Fame quarterback retiring era. This happened to the Colts with Peyton Manning, who didn't retire but left, to the Giants with Eli Manning, to the Patriots and Tom Brady. You can go down the line there. Remember, Najee Harris was a captain his second season in the NFL because they just didn't have any guys there, and you got to try to make somebody a leader on this team. So,
and was that wrong in and of itself because he's never really come up? It seemed like a more of a begrudging go lead, push him out to the front of the pack, right?
Yeah, square peg, round hole situation where Harris, I think he became a better leader and assumed some of those things more naturally later in his career. I think this past summer, the Hyman and Pat Frymuth really stepped up and became more leaders, more vocal. But yeah, it was certainly shoehorned in because Pittsburgh was a young team. They really had no identity. There was no franchise quarterback. There was no veteran. It was Mitch, but it wasn't. That's not like a Ben or even a Russ. So Harris's comments again, to sum it up, are accurate. Were they necessary? Probably not, but they're also not new because he's made these comments before.
To some degree, right? You just
Well,
got
certainly about the identity.
right. You got all of them in one sit down this time.
Yeah, and to a different audience.
Right.
It's because I remember that happened. I mean, because there were some times after losses. I think the last game that Matt Canada coached in 2023, that Browns loss. I remember Harris after the game I think he had said something to the effect of like, "I want to say something, but I can't." But he's made references to lack of identity before. I think even in some positive ways. I think this year he talked about, or in 2024, he talked about the team felt like they had a better identity now than they ever had before. So there's been references to similar comments that Harris made now, but it's a different audience. It gets picked up by the national media, becomes a big story.
All right. And we obviously wish Najee Harris well, and probably a good fit over there in the Chargers offense. And interesting to see the contract that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And he's playing for even bigger money in potentially a year from now in his 1-year deal with the Chargers. So we'll see how that turns out, and we'll kind of keep an eye and ear out for maybe comments that he makes as things go forward here.
I think it'll be a great fit in LA. I think he'll have a great season. If he had a career year, at least in terms of efficiency, I would not be surprised one bit. Justin Fields spoke to the Jets media for the first time earlier this week and was asked about what made him want to sign with New York. And a lot of this is pretty boilerplate common speak, but talked about he loved the chance to play for Aaron Glenn, and they had their battles in the NFC North when Fields was in Chicago and Glenn was in Detroit, and loved the organization, the chance to win. Some viewed that as some sort of shade towards Pittsburgh. I did not at all. It's again pretty standard lines you'll say about the new team that just signed you, but that was Fields' kind of first comment since leaving Pittsburgh.
Yeah, if you probably hook him up to a lie detector test, it was about the money.
Often about the money.
More so than anything else.
Yeah. So to me, there was nothing even, not even to the Harris degree of comments. There was no shade at Pittsburgh.
I didn't view it as any shade for him. Good kid. I'll except when it comes to the Steelers and playing the Steelers and impacting them, as far as standings and all like that. I'll root for Justin Fields.
Yeah, I root for all these guys. And Pittsburgh will play the Jets this year. Does Pittsburgh have any free agents left? Are there any guys that are free agents that have been unsigned besides Russ?
That are notable?
Just any. Just any of the unrestricted free agents who are still on the market. Because you talk about how many guys have been scooped up by either other teams or the couple that have re-signed with Pittsburgh.
Let's see. Preston Smith, I believe, is still on the street after being cut.
But he's at least a cut, not an actual free agent.
DeMonte Casey is unrestricted, unsigned.
True.
Michael Pruitt is unrestricted, unsigned.
Okay.
Tyler Matakevich, I believe. Cameron Sutton is in the same boat, unrestricted, unsigned. CJ Henderson ended on the practice squad, did he not?
Well, he ended on IR, right? Because that neck injury. I don't know
but it
what
was
his
a practice squad. His contract just terminated. Two linemen in Max Sharping and Calvin Anderson, I believe, ended on the 53. They are both unrestricted, unsigned, as far as I can tell.
Okay, so there are a couple of names left, but a lot of these pending guys have been scooped up, and Pittsburgh's lost about 5,000 just offensive and defensive snaps in terms of guys who have been officially signed away, not even including Russ. And so wrote about this earlier this week. I mentioned it a time or two. Pittsburgh's change really seems to be about turning over its roster pretty heavily.
Right. And we talked about that coming out, that you probably would see maybe even, this year's initial 53 might be more than 33% changed.
In terms of the people themselves, person
Yeah.
to person. Yeah, but then you get into snap counts too, and that I wonder
Right.
what that percentage will look like. It's going to be a huge number, I'm sure, as well. All right, Dave, any pro day information? We'll see. We haven't gotten any word on Michigan as of this recording. I'm sure we'll have it by the time people listen to this. You would expect Tomlin, Kahn, the names you mentioned earlier, to all be in attendance. Don't think there's been anything major the last couple days. Zach Gazani was at the Big 12 and their stupid pro day combine thing yesterday for the bunch of the receivers there. Um, should note that Isaac Williams, the assistant O-line coach, was in William and Mary for Charles Grant, their top tier offensive tackle, who could be a pretty high day 2 selection. So want to note that. But first we thought it was Pat Meyer, but it ended up being Isaac Williams, and that's a little less interesting than had Meyer attended.
Was there anybody else notable other than that we came across?
Not from a coordinator or
Terrell
position
Austin was
coach.
at Alabama. I don't know if we talked about that the other day. Did we spot Arthur Smith there?
I did not. No,
Okay. All right.
don't believe he was there.
All right. And once again, like we said at the top of the show, the Michigan Pro Days today. Carl Dunbar's got to be at that, right?
I mean, I guess it partially depends on what the D linemen are doing, kind of the case you made with Derek Harmon, but I think Grant had that hamstring injury at the combine that didn't allow him to really work out. I don't know if that's healed yet or not. I hope that it has. And I know Graham only benched at the combine, so I imagine he'll go through his workout. And so, assuming they are participating, I would imagine Dunbar would be there.
All right. What are the other notable? What other pro days are today?
Florida State.
Yeah.
Secondary, at least the cornerback, Thomas.
Is Ike going to be at that one? What is Ike's role right now, by the way?
I have
what
no
what
idea.
exactly does Ike Taylor do here?
So
Him and his son were at Alabama.
His son attends Alabama, right?
Right.
So it's hard to tell. Was he there in a Steelers capacity? He was wearing Steelers gear, but was he there for that or for his son? It's been an unofficial scouting role. I do not know if he still is in that position, but that he certainly had that role for some period of time.
Let's see. I looked at. I didn't see any. Do you see anybody from Cal yesterday?
I honestly didn't even check. I didn't even realize the
I
Cal Pro
checked
Day
and
was yesterday.
I
They had
didn't
to have
see.
had somebody there.
Yeah, I didn't
No?
see any. I mean, I haven't spotted them.
Okay.
Eastern Michigan, Florida A&M. I checked Florida A&M. I didn't see anybody there. I didn't check Middle Tennessee. I checked UAB. I didn't see anybody there. We know about William and Mary. Let's see. Other today, Florida State, Michigan, Missouri, North Texas, Utah State, and Youngstown State.
Missouri's got a bunch of prospects this year to check
Mhm.
out, including your guy, Johnny Walker, who's a combine snub, and so big day for him. So that'll be a really interesting pro day. Florida State, some guys as well, despite their poor season last year. I don't believe anyone was at Eastern Michigan. I know people have been asking us, Dave, who was at EMU, but I saw a list of scouts that were reported to have attended, and I don't believe the Steelers were on that list.
All right. Okay, we'll keep that tracked and updated. You're doing a great job with the tracker. I believe I lead you, though, in the scoring, something like 9,002 to like 4 or something, because I got bonus double, triple score credit for Chidi Iwamu.
Yeah, stop taking Cheaty from me. Let me go spot him.
Yeah, that's a prize, and I think I only have the only twofer on the board. If people
No one cares about
knew how nerdy, they probably get it. How things become games with us, and but we love doing it. That kind of thing there. But and in the grand scheme of things, it is fun kind of track who's where and how it relates to draft, and the position coaches are always key within all that. So just a fun game, things that we do that other people don't do that we take great pride in. But it is kind of funny how we kind of silently, at least I do, keep score in all this.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of big competitive dorks out here.
You've
All
got
right,
you
Dave.
got a much better eye in some of these than I do to have those youthful eyes that you have to pick some of these guys out.
That I'm sure I'm ruining by squinting into my screen trying to find where the Steelers scouts are at. I'll tell my eye doctor that. All right,
All right.
Dave. Anything else? Let me know. If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's get into Dustin here. Writes in, your Steelers coverage is second to none. Always appreciate the insights and analysis you bring to the table. I don't recognize Dustin's name. So, Dustin, if you're a new emailer, congrats. Thank you. I've got my tinfoil hat on for this one. With all the comp picks the Steelers have already accumulated, I'm wondering if the reported interest in Aaron Rodgers might actually be strategic. Could they be positioning themselves to get another comp pick if Russell Wilson leaves, and with Russ, it will likely be a fairly high one? Okay, good question, Dustin. I get that there, but you should not be making drastic quarterback decisions and the like related to fallout of compensatory value. Now, I will say this about the overall scope of where this team looks at where they're at right now from a compensatory pick gain for 2026. It looks like they do. It obviously looks like they have one eye on that when it comes to guys being cut versus if they are free agents and the value of the contract and all like that. But I think they're moderately shaping compensatory draft pick value around what their overall game plan is. I don't think they're going into this saying, well, let's not re-sign Russ for the sheer fact of the compensatory value they might get should Russell Wilson sign elsewhere. Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a point we made before. Don't let the comp pick tail wag the dog is kind of my standpoint. You get comp picks, that's fantastic. You want to be cognizant of that and kind of be able to map out your future. And certainly, assuming you get a healthy number of comp picks next year, that's going to be an asset to trade up for a quarterback. But that can't drive your decision making. And I don't think it is here. I think it is truly A, they probably believe Rodgers is the better quarterback overall, the better passer. And then B, more importantly, which really should be A, is whatever rift exists between Wilson and the coaching staff is too much of a bridge to gap, too many broken fences to mend. And so they're pivoting off of Russ because of that.
Right. Okay, let's go to Chris Warren back in here. He's a regular emailer. I think Alex may be onto something with respect to the Steelers' interest in shoring up the safety position for the future. I want to make the case for Xavier Watts, he says, in the third or fourth round. This guy can play both safety positions. He was a team captain at Notre Dame. He is extremely smart and is always around the ball. Please keep in mind that Watts had a shoulder injury that limited him in the national championship game, but before that, he was excellent in coverage, run support, and blitzing the quarterback. He says the Ravens have demonstrated how much of a game changer it is to have a smart, versatile playmaker and Notre Dame alum to boot, roaming the middle of the field and shutting down tight ends. Plus, much like Kyle Hamilton, who backs up Roquan Smith with the green dot responsibilities, Xavier Watts could also grow into that role. The Steelers are going to fall in love with this kid during the Notre Dame Pro Day on 3/27, live on Peacock from 12:30 p.m. Boy,
It's the advertisement.
Chris has got us covered here. Live on Peacock from 12:30 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Come join me on the bandwagon. Alex did make a great point about the safety need in this class. I think Watts was one of the names that I rolled through, kind of wondering about the draft class within this. So yeah, I think we got a profile up on Watts, right?
We should. Believe so.
And if not, we will. Point taken, Chris. I think Xavier Watts potentially does have to be in consideration here, and it will be interesting to see who shows up at that Notre Dame Pro Day. Will it be Gerald Alexander?
On 3/27 on
All right.
Peacock,
All right.
apparently.
Good Good info, Chris. Alexander Campbell writes in, for the last 10 plus years, the Steelers have had a bigger body back as their lead running back, Harris, Connor, Bell. The talk has always been that the team looks for those type of runners to shoulder the load. Now we have Warren and Gainwell, who are both on the shorter end of the spectrum. Furthermore, it seems that many of the backs that the team is showing interest in during the pre-draft process are also shorter backs. Dylan Sampson and Bashal Tootin both came in for pre-draft visits and are 5'9" and quarter or shorter. And the team met with Genty, Henderson, James, Blue, and at the combine in varying capacities, and all those backs are undersized as well. He says, do you think that this means that the team is likely to break its precedent on leaning on a big-bodied running back like they have for the last decade? And if so, what does that say about the state of the running back position? Is it counterintuitive to sign an OC like Arthur Smith, who focuses on a power running game, and then pivot to a running back full of undersized guys?
Well, a couple things there. Yes, I would say that this is a sign that Pittsburgh is no longer, and hasn't for a while now, had that lead workhorse back approach. You had your Bells, your James Connors, your Najee Harris, his rookie year as the guy that would play 80% of the snaps, tote the ball 300 plus times. But then once Jalen Warren came in, you had a committee, and so now that work's going to be split up more evenly. And Arthur Smith has had, certainly his fair share of committees, especially in Atlanta. And so you don't have to have that guy that's the biggest guy that can shoulder that workload wire to wire. And I think Pittsburgh wants more explosiveness, and so that needs a smaller guy. Then so be it, rather than the 6'1", 6'2", that's more of that plotting, get what's blocked type of runner. Now, I would also say Arthur Smith is known for a zone scheme, not less so of a gap and power scheme. And so if you get guys who are explosive, can find the hole, put their foot in the ground, get vertical, that fits the Arthur Smith offense.
Good answer. This team's drafting a running back, right?
Yes, his question is just who and where. I think third, fourth round is the likely spot for running back to slide in.
All right, let's go to Brett Niles. Got a couple of emails in here. I'm going to take the shorter of the two because Brett likes to get a little lengthy here. Let me first say that I have no interest in trading for Cousins under any circumstances. He says he looks cooked. No way I would give up assets for that, he says. Second, if the Steelers end up going into the season with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, should they then consider trading Pickens, probably drafting a receiver to replace him? He says, I know you said that the Metcalf move was made to maximize the window for this aging defense. He says, I'm not so sure that makes any sense. He says the defense was not good last year and hasn't really been good for years. It's had a great pass rush, which disappeared last year, but any team that has committed to running the ball has had success, and the 5-game losing streak last year highlighted how much. In my opinion, he says this defense is not Super Bowl caliber. This seems to be an example of throwing good money after bad. The defense wasn't bad. Other than that, how'd you enjoy the play, Mrs. Lincoln? The run defense was very concerning against the teams that you thought were going to be able to try to run the football on this. The team sack total was down overall. They did have the takeaways, though, that helped. I mean, which would you rather have, a sack or a takeaway?
Yeah, sure.
There's that aspect of there. Basically, he's saying it's wrong to look at keeping Pickens just because you're trying to keep maybe a window open for Watt and Hayward, and especially if Mason Rudolph is at your quarterback, you should dump everything at that point and just trade Pickens and go get a receiver to play along with DK Metcalf.
I guess the thought being, if you have Mason as your quarterback, you're not going to win, so just trade and get future assets. We'll cross those bridges when we get the quarterback dust to settle. I mean, yeah, the defense has had their problems. They faded down the stretch, no question about that. It's why this team has to retool its front seven, get more physical and better against the run. But it's still been a top 10 scoring defense, I think, in like 4 of the last 5 years. They're still even a top 10 run defense in terms of yards per carry allowed last year. So I think it's a little overstated how negative the comment is on the defense. It is not the elite defense that it was, say, in 2019 or in the Super Bowl trips. I agree there, and it's aging. But I just think it's still the strength of the team. It's still a better defense than it is a better offense right now, and it has been the case for years. And regardless of whether you like the defense or how we feel about the defense, you and I, Dave, Pittsburgh still thinks they can win with this defense, and they want to be able to win now to maximize what happens before Haywood retires and Watt gets older, because you think the defense has problems now. Imagine what will happen a couple of years from now if these young guys don't pan out and Hayward's gone and Watt's in his mid-30s and Minka's in his 30s. So, again, right or wrong, the Steelers believe they can win. And Metcalf is not here for just the present. He's here for a long-term future as well, but he's certainly here to help this offense get better, to try to balance out the strength of the offense and defense, not have it be so one-sided, and for Pittsburgh's mind to be able to compete and win a playoff game and hopefully go on a run.
And this offense, regardless of who the quarterback is better with Pickens and Metcalf together than it is with Pickens sent elsewhere. But Pickens' attitude and his actions from here out until week 1 will probably play a large part in whether or not he is ultimately dealt.
Agreed. And even on the idea of trading him if Mason's your quarterback, like, what do you think Pickens' draft value or value is right now, trade value is right now, Dave, if he was on the block?
All depends on how the conversations go with whatever team might want to acquire him and sign him to a deal. I think that plays a large part, because you run the risk of acquiring him playing 1 year, and then him leaving for a nice contract, and you just getting the compensatory value out of him.
Sure. Well, we'll factor in the assumption he's signing a long-term deal with whoever trades for him.
I think if you got a second-round pick for him, you've done good, because teams are going to be concerned about the character aspect of him.
Yeah, I don't think he goes for a 2. Metcalf went for a 2. I think Metcalf is above where Pickens is at, even though in the contract situation, I think at best you would get a 3rd for George Pickens, and under the assumption the team is also signing him long term. And so if you're Pittsburgh, you can trade him for a 3rd now, or you can let him walk after this season, have good odds of getting 3rd round comp value for the 2027 draft, which I know is a bit of a wait, but is it really worth it to trade Pickens now for a 3rd when you're probably going to get a 3rd round comp pick for him in a couple of years anyway? You could still argue that, obviously, and if he becomes a big headache, then that's reason to trade him. But again, I am not itching to trade Pickens unless he forces my hand to trade him.
All right, Alex, this just popped in my head here. This team currently has 2 picks in the first 3 rounds, 21st overall, and I believe 83 overall. That means they have just 2 picks in the first top 100 picks, right? This team really likes to, at least of late, have 3 picks in the top 100, right?
What was Kevin Colbert's comment about having at least 1 pick on day 2? I remember that happened in the Devin Bush deal, but yeah, I'm with you.
Do you think come draft day, this team will have 3, or at some point during the first 3 rounds, this team will end up with 3 picks somehow within the first 100 picks?
I mean, predicting draft day trades is just so difficult to do. Even if you want to be a team who wants to make a move, you never know until really it's draft day and you're on the clock and you see the board, you see the offers and how things are moving and shaking. So I'd like for them to have that. You try to do these mock drafts, and it's hard to fill in some of the needs with only 2 picks in the top 110 picks or whatever it is, 125 selections. You think when is Pittsburgh's 4th round selection? When is that overall?
123, I think.
Yeah, so you got 2 picks in the top 120. It's hard to accomplish a lot with that. So yes, I mean, I've always kind of been a proponent of trade down, acquire capital, have some more picks to give you more chances to hit. But I just can't say. And if you are trading down, are you trading down from 21 and maybe missing out on one of those defensive linemen that you're angling for? Are you trading out down in the 3rd round? I mean, if you do that, you're gonna be able to pick up another pick in the top 100 from 83? Probably not. So I will say no right now.
All right. Let me add on to this. The deeper that you get into this draft class as a whole, what do you think about it?
I mean, I'm bad at some of those big questions. I try to take it more positionally.
I mean, we
it's
know
an
it's
okay
strong at
class.
defensive lineman. We know it's strong at running back, but you know, it's pretty decent at tight end.
Yeah, it's not top heavy. You're lacking those blue chip prospects at quarterback, especially, but even other positions of years past. There's some depth at certain positions, and there's a lack of depth at others. It's hard to really give a good answer on the draft class as a whole. You have to really talk about it more specifically, but I would call it just on the whole an okay draft class, not one of the strongest classes to come out in recent years. And it's still one of the older classes as it kind of get away in those final COVID years where I think starting probably next year, your classes start looking younger as guys didn't have to have those COVID exemptions.
All right, file this away. That we'll only mention again if Dave is right. I think
So
come. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, so you're predicting to have 3 picks?
Yeah, within the top 100 come time.
All right. So a trade down from 21 has to be the only way they do it.
I don't know how they do it, but
Where they trade up.
I don't know how they do it, but we'll only dare mention this again if I'm right.
All right, there you go.
Just fun to kind of look at it.
Is that how you're leading this scoreboard, by the way? I feel like we're
of
leading it by
course.
counting your wins. Yes, the Dave Bryan game. It's like Hunger Games.
I'll fight you for
it. You'll win.
Okay. Anything else you want to get to? Got a couple more emails in here, but I think maybe we can put those off until Monday here.
Yeah, it sounds good. Not seeing again anything on Michigan Pro Day, but we'll certainly keep you posted on that later today.
5 minutes after we get off this, we'll get the Mike Tomlin signing here. So let's go ahead and report a Mike Tomlin signing.
Yes.
Just so we're right. But anywho, happy Friday, everybody. Let's see. If you want to follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot, follow Alex at Alex_Kozora, follow the show at Terrible Podcast, email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, Steelers Depot, hit the ad-free button. We've got a iOS app at the Apple App Store if you'd like to download that and get notifications that way. A lot of great stuff up on the site. My cap update. Alex has got some good stuff up there. All the guys have got a small school week as far as the draft prospects go. That's very entertaining to read some of these that the guys are putting out. Great job on that. As well, a couple of mock drafts mixed in, our own and national media type guys. So there's plenty. While you got the March Madness tournament on the rest of the weekend, we hope to try to keep at least one of your eyes maybe entertained within all that. Great emails. Once again, keep those coming. Alex and I, barring anything significant happening, will be back on Monday. So as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.